Okay, so we can start our session now, I think. I'll just go to the full screen view and let's go. So first of all, I'm really happy to conduct this session for you. And it was such a surprise for me to discover that Medium, this grand platform for blogging, has never conducted such gatherings before. And I'm happy to join the first gathering of the community of Medium. And today we're going to talk about a hybrid topic, how to work on design articles, because it combines both design part and writing. Let's get acquainted first. My name is Slava. I'm a designer from Ukraine. And my story is that I studied journalism at the university, but then switched to digital design. It was 12 years ago. And you know what? I never regret either of these facts in my life. Here you can see quite a weird picture where I'm taking an interview. It was 2010 in my native city of Cherkasy. And back then I was a trainee at the regional department of the Ministry of Emergencies. And believe it or not, I saw the firefighting tank. Yeah, that's real. Such thing exists. But then I switched to design, which is no less exciting. And of course, I faced this dilemma, working as a designer, but also having this inner passion to share knowledge and to write articles. So I am doing both. And besides, I have two blogs on Medium. Feel free to visit them if you want to learn more about the topic of design, of course, but also architecture. I'm interested in it and it's my hobby. So if you have the same passion or you simply like looking at nice things and nice places, then welcome. But let's go back to our topic, writing useful articles on design. And first of all, let's define what is a useful article on design. In my opinion, there are a couple of points. So first of all, a useful article doesn't include information buzz, everything that distracts us and irritates so much in modern internet, like selling language, dummy paragraphs for search engine optimization, ads, interruptions, all the stuff like that. And often it happens that we are attracted by an interesting title of this article, but like the Trojan horse, it includes something that we are very well prepared for, and our expectations are not met as a result. Besides, a useful article is something that includes advice that a person can apply right away. Next working day in a familiar tool like Figma, if we're talking about digital design, with the team on Monday with teammates, let's say, or using an attached template, because it's always pleasant to get something after reading an article, not just the knowledge, but also template, freebie, whatever. Yeah, but please don't go and try the things that you learned from the article directly in the master file. It might be a bit dangerous. And in my opinion, the best metric to understand whether the article is useful and practical is how many times it has been bookmarked. That's a great thing to track, something very obvious, non-theoretical. Besides, a useful article supports its points with lots of realistic examples. Otherwise, it will be just, I don't know, bare theory. There is this famous saying that theory without practice is dead, and practice without theory is blind. And the last point, what a useful article is, before we go to tips and tricks, it's evergreen. I mean that it won't quickly lose its value. For example, when a trend is outdated or the hype is over, or an app or tool mentioned in this article is retired. Like usability of complex data tables. It's not a surprise anymore, but we have lots of complex data tables in 2023, and I think we will have them for years to come, and comprehensive, well-written articles about designing complex data tables 5, 10 years ago, they are still useful and handy resources for everyone. But reading design articles is not the same thing as writing design articles. And if some of you have tried that in practice, you'll understand me. And because to write a great design article, or at least a good or decent design article, takes a lot of time, effort, concentration, and might not be good for your nervous system. Why so? Because if you write articles more or less systematically, or you have a great idea of an article and suddenly you decided to start writing it, you will find yourself on the overlap of contradicting priorities, of new article ideas, finishing old drafts, promoting that stuff on social media. Otherwise, it won't be seen by anyone and won't bring its usefulness to people. Researching new topics, and all that with the deficit of both time and energy, because you also have to do the main job. I think it's typical for designers that we are not earning money on article writing, but rather sharing knowledge in our free time additionally to the main job. So, what can we do to make articles that we produce and publish more useful? The first recommendation that I want to share with you is writing use case introductions. And let me explain what I mean. Of course, you've probably seen articles by Nielsen Norman Group, and they have become classic, I would say, especially this habit of all the authors within Nielsen Norman Group to start their articles with a summary, so that you exactly know what you're gonna read next. That's great technique, and I was inspired by that. Back in 2017, when I wrote my first article on design and published it on Medium. Unfortunately, then later I deleted it because it was pretty generic. But my second article got quite popular, and I haven't managed to beat its popularity until now. And it also starts with a summary, but slightly different. Then I developed my own approach to writing summaries, and I hope that you can reuse it um, if you find it practical or meaningful or relevant to your case. So communicating the use case at the very beginning of the article is answering the three questions: what is it? Whom is it for? And what will they gain? Those people for whom it has been written. What is it? There are many genres of articles popular in the design world: toolkits, guidelines, templates, FAQs, cheat sheets, handbooks, guides, recommendations, overviews, tips and tricks, ratings, and many others. So it already sets the expectation of what you will get at the end after reading the article. Then it's worth mentioning for whom this article is written. You can mention the level of a designer, the profession, because it should not necessarily be a designer, it may be developer, researcher, analyst, whoever. Or if it's not limited by representatives of a certain profession or function, then you can formulate it differently, like for everyone who deals with something on a daily basis, or for people who have never tried something in their practice, or for experienced practitioners of some methodology or tool, meaning that you're gonna share something advanced with them that they haven't tried before. And the third part of this use case introduction is the promise of the value that people will get from this article. For example, the material in this article will help you to get started in certain area or activity, or upgrade your skills in something, or optimize something that you produce anyway within your job for a particular situation or in order to avoid a certain risk. Besides, you can help people build, establish, create something like positive culture in the team, or reach success in something, land a great job, for example. And let's go to particular examples. Here in this article, you can see all the three elements, and they are distributed between the title, subtitle, and the first paragraph, the introductory paragraph. What is it? Canvas template. For whom? New design leads. And what for? To set up collaboration rules in a design team and establish trustful relationship with people. Another example, detailed cheat sheet with for people who are going to conduct their first accessibility testing session. And what for? To observe a real person with a disability walk through a site or application and get lots of priceless insights. Then the third example, what are those things? Advanced tips for designers. What for? To showcase your work in a way that helps hiring managers grasp your skills and experience, and ways to optimize your portfolio for clarity and engagement. As you can see, if you mention that at the very beginning of your article, you won't mislead the readers and you will attract the attention of the audience for whom this material was created initially. Next one, ensure a digestible, clear scope. That's a tricky thing because you can hardly find the really new topic. For example, if you follow the tag portfolio, you're going to get 13,000 stories on Medium only. Of course, these are not all design-related portfolios, but still, let's divide it in half. It will be enormous amount, and it's just Medium only. Don't forget about personal blogs, personal websites, other websites, social media posts, Twitter threads, and so on and so forth. If we take usability testing, that's the most typical UX topic one can think of, 3,000+ stories in Medium only. So you cannot find anything really new. And if you follow the current trends, there is another risk that this trend will be over next year. What happens? Based on my observation, there are two things happening in the connection with this fact that there are lots of articles already written, perfectionism and clickbait. And if you know this image, that's quite a tricky artwork because if you mirror the first side, you're gonna get a kind person, and if you mirror the right part, you will see this evil portrait of a devil. And in terms of our topic, these are the metaphors that I chose for Mr. Perfectionism and Mr. Clickbait, based on their intentions. So let's start from Mr. Clickbait. It's simpler. There are many clickbait cliches used in the design article world. Adjectives like comprehensive, ultimate, complete, exhaustive, essential, the only, something you're gonna need. And unfortunately, not all articles of this kind are really keeping their promises. If you find ultimate, comprehensive, all-in-one guideline on UX mapping methods, and then you notice that it's just 4 minutes of reading, probably it's neither ultimate nor comprehensive. Although some of the articles are quite comprehensive and they get attention from the audience they deserve. At the same time, there are many misleading titles. And if you search for ultimate guide in the area of UX on Medium, you'll have lots of results. And I should confess, because I named my articles the same way some time ago, not a single article, but I would say maybe up to 4 or 5 articles. And at some point, I understood that when everything is ultimate, everything is comprehensive, then nothing really is comprehensive, because there is no difference, how you can, no way to tell the difference. So I edited that out from the titles of my articles, and I think that it's a normal thing to do, not to shout at your audience, but simply declare what it is about and keep the promise. So often happens something like this. Oh, ultimate handbook on usability testing. That's exactly what I need as a designer. Let's go and check it. Okay, 3-minute read, and then subscribe to my paid newsletter for more. Not exactly what I wanted, because that's an interruption. Of course, I can understand the intention of authors to monetize their activity, but at the same time, in the area of design, in my opinion, it's something more than earning money. We as designers have our main job, and article writing is the way to contribute to the community, because you share some stuff with others, and then you learn from others. This helps our whole profession to progress, to develop, and open new horizons every year. But there is another side. We've just talked about Mr. Clickbait, but also there is this Mr. Perfectionism. Since there are many articles already written about design in the world, every new author wants to contribute in a unique way, and create more practical article, more illustrated, more complete, more up-to-date, better, better illustrated, better explained in simpler language, and other adjectives that you can think of. But unfortunately, that leads to the articles that never see the audience. Like this famous Sagrada Familia cathedral in Barcelona. It has a grand plan, amazing, beautiful building, quite unique, but it's still in progress, still being built. And the architect won't see his creation because he's already dead. And when we use this metaphor in the topic of design article writing, it means that if the article has too huge plan, there is a high chance it will never be written. I have 49 drafts and counting on my Medium, and some of them will never make it into an article. And these are notes in my Google Keep, again, embryos of future articles, but who knows whether I'll ever convert them into an article. But what helps is writing with usefulness in mind. So limit yourself from the start. Target the audience with a certain knowledgeability level, particular use case, or specific area, domain, industry, or just limit yourself to a certain number of items if there are many items of this sort. Let's think how to transform the intention to contribute to the topic of user journey mapping, which is quite typical, and there is a lot of stuff written on this topic. So you can narrow it down to a journey mapping starter pack for UX beginners. You have a use case and a certain level of the audience, and it's clear from the title. Or you can write 5 advanced techniques for journey mapping practitioners. Again, you mention the knowledgeability level of your audience and the number of items, 5 techniques. Maybe there are, I don't know, thousands of techniques, but you will focus on 5 based on your experience that you have tried successfully with your team. Or the peculiarities of journey mapping for municipal authorities. In this case, you talk about specific domain, and that's why this article is useful and unique for those who found themselves in the same conditions. So instead of everything everywhere all at once, particular usefulness for a certain audience in a specific situation. What else can we do to make articles useful? Starting with a robust content structure. That's a screenshot of a Ukrainian blog platform, Drukarnia, which has a feature of exposing the structure. And owing to that, you can see that my recent article on preparing design portfolios, which is, by the way, also available in English, has a structure of 10 points. So you can easily navigate through that and be prepared for this kind of reading. It's pretty transparent. And owing to the skeleton, it was easier to work on the meat, on all the paragraphs and text and illustrations, because I defined the skeleton beforehand and limited myself to a certain amount of information, because everyone working in the design area can talk about portfolios for hours, some people for days. And the structure or the skeleton in terms of article writing is having a title, subtitle, intro paragraph, and then a set of headings of different levels. And here you can see the article, which is right now in progress. I haven't finished it yet. I'm not sure whether I'll finish it, but at least I defined the preliminary subtopics of how to structure the content and what to write about. Or another example about documenting UX research results. Again, the structure is already there. There are lots of spaces in between because it takes time to write meaningful content and prepare illustrations, but at least I have the vision of what it should be. And it helps not to act as a perfectionist and start something that I won't finish during my lifetime. But there is one more powerful technique, visual storytelling. When you translate the structure of the article into the visual story, adding images that illustrate each point and that are distributed in an even way throughout the article. That's an example that inspires me a lot. Was written by Danny Sapio, 10 asshole design patterns. And as you can see, it's the list of different patterns illustrated with pictures and comments. So it's easy to digest. It gives you lots of insights. And after reading this article, you'll start noticing those design patterns everywhere in the apps on your smartphone, in the, I don't know, banking terminals and everywhere else. And inspired by this approach, in my article on 7 deadly sins of data visualization, I applied the same kind of visual storytelling. And since we're talking about images, let's talk about them in detail, preparing article-specific illustrations. Here, you can see the 4 horsemen of UX article apocalypse. I guess half of all the articles about UX, about digital design on the internet have one of these pictures. That's what I call unsplash-driven illustration. They are easily accessible, I would say too easily. That's why if there is a need to add a filler picture for the cover, people go here and take one. But unfortunately, they have questionable usefulness because they have no connection to a particular article and a person writing it. And what's the better alternative? The real photo with your team, or an illustration or diagram, something unique that adds value to the writing. But those stock images and AI-generated collages, they are easily available. And since, again, it's typical for designers to write articles in their free time from the main job, we try to optimize, but unfortunately this optimization goes at the cost of the article quality. Better alternatives are unique diagrams, as I mentioned, real-life examples, annotated screenshots, before-after states, does and don'ts, and so on. Like here, this is a 2017 article by Andrew Coyle on designing better data tables, and it's amazingly illustrated with lots of animated images created in one style and illustrating all the points one by one. I really admired this article, and it's inspired me to write my first articles because it was 2017. Then there is another great piece by Taras Bakusevich, a Ukrainian designer. He wrote a series of articles about UI components for UX Collective. And this one in particular is about buttons, starting with anatomy, going to states, and covering written for a person who hasn't worked with buttons a lot before and wants an easy to digest reference material to structure the knowledge in one's mind before proceeding to design. And in my article about optical effects in interfaces and visual perception, of course, I could go to Google and use one of those ready collages or articles, diagrams about Gestalt principles of visual perception. But they are quite theoretical and scientific. Instead, I wanted to connect this topic with the usage in user interfaces, and something that designers do every day. And that's why I created a set of my own illustrations about optical balancing of the icons, correct shapes alignment, perfect corner rounding, and so on. So your readers will only benefit from a combination of meaningful text and useful illustrations. But of course, all the things that I mentioned today, they are not the ideal recipe for good writing. It's just one of a million ways to write well. And since we're talking about writing well, here are a couple of books that influenced my style of writing. That's an amazing book on writing well. I bought it during my business trip in the US. And it's extremely helpful and surprisingly non-designer's design book by Robin Williams, the classics on the fundamental principles of visual design, but it's extremely clear with lots of illustrations and examples. And before we switch to the Q&A session, a couple of more things. Unfortunately, my native country, Ukraine, is at war with the invaders, so I cannot miss the opportunity to share a couple of ways how you can support Ukraine. If you want to learn more about writing articles or any other design topic, feel free to book a mentorship session with me or one of 600 other experts on Projector Mentorship platform in exchange for a charity donation. 100% of the money will go to Ukrainian defenders. But if you are okay with the information that you've just learned and you don't need a mentorship session, then please support the charitable foundation Silny, which supports the victims of probably the most cruel war crime perpetrated by Russians in Ukraine, sexual violence. And let me switch to the session itself and see whether we have Q&A. Oh, that's very kind of you, Helena. Thank you so much for sharing that article. And if you have any questions about writing articles, then feel free to ask. Okay, I think, let me see. I see that there are 3 requests in moderation. Seems like you all want to ask questions with your voice. So let's do that. I see Dave, Maria, and Week. Let me then allow you to do that. So I suppose that you click that in order to ask questions. So I've just added you in the moderation tab. Do you see any changes? Okay, so meanwhile, I have a question here in the tab, in the Q&A tab. Hi, thanks so much for sharing your analysis. This was an excellent presentation. Thank you so much for your kind words. But do you have tips on transforming them into actionable larger project pitches? That's an interesting question. In my opinion, there is quite a serious contrast between useful, practical, step-by-step articles and project pitches. I think they are driven by different motivation and methods vary, and that's why these are kind of not very consistent genres. Because in the useful article, again, according to my definition, because everyone understands usefulness differently, that's something, that's the way to share knowledge and skills and help people apply that as soon as possible in whatever they do with the best result possible. Pitch, in my experience, aims at selling stuff or promoting an idea and convincing other people either to trust in that or to invest their money or change their behavior or style of action in a certain way. And based on that motivation, the methodology you're going to use will differ. That's why I'm not sure if they are fully consistent. Of course, a good pitch should not be too much selling and should not give wrong promises. And the thing that one can inherit from this method of writing useful articles is thinking about practical usefulness for the listener, for the person on that side who's listening to this pitch and from whom you expect a certain action. So that would be my answer here. Okay, let me see what's happening here. We are a little bit out of time as far as I see. But if you are still here in this session, first of all, I'm really grateful for your attention, that you chose to be with me today and listen to this presentation. Hope it will be useful for you and you learn something that you can apply in practice starting from Monday. But if not, then feel free to contact me everywhere on social media. I'll eagerly answer your questions, be it article writing or anything design related. I'll be happy to communicate with you and continue our communication after the Medium Day. Okay, I see a question from Anonymous. Do you have any tips when working on the article-specific illustrations, visual, layout, information density, etc.? That's a great question. A couple of tips. First of all, since I'm both delivering talks like today and writing articles, I've already developed more or less a UI kit, or I would say illustration kit in Figma, where I create illustrations, which are both useful for presentations and articles. And I even chose the ratio of the illustrations, which is both fine for screen sharing, but also fits the article format. It's 19 by 11. Why so? It's somewhere in the middle and it fits everywhere. So I chose it. As for the elements themselves, I have more or less stable palette of colors that I use. They are of high contrast because when I started my public activity, usually the equipment in the rooms where I presented something was not the best one. And you might know this effect of the projector when a light gray color and some other colors are simply not visible at all. So I always choose colors of high contrast. And in my illustrations about interfaces, I try to use a neutral style, something that is pretty far from a particular design system, a particular product that you might recognize. It's I would even call it brutalist style, black and white, shades of gray, something like that, to show the principle, the structure, something that works under the hood and is not related to any specific visual method that you're going to use, the corner rounding or color or shadow, whatever. It's not essential in the ideas that I want to convey. Of course, if I wrote about specifically tiny visual tips and tricks, I would be attentive. But anyway, I try to stick to the neutral style, a certain palette of colors, to reuse elements and use self-made components in Figma, the same fonts everywhere, and keep high contrast, just to make sure that those illustrations will be well readable. Yeah, these are the specific tips and tricks. Thanks for your question. Okay, I see that not many people are in the session right now because probably you have something else interesting to listen to. We have multiple tracks because it's not a traditional conference, but rather like a musical festival when there are multiple stages where you can go and listen to something. So I'll wait just a couple of more minutes and then we will finish this session. And again, I'm really grateful to all of you for staying until the end. Okay, so I think now we can close the session. Really grateful for your attendance, great questions, listening to the stuff that I shared with you. Let's connect elsewhere and have a great evening and the continuation of the Medium Day. Have a good one. Bye.